Right then. Here we go. So today is all about, oh, good morning, Noah and Shepherd, and Alexandra, and Explorer Gengar. Ooh, a Gengar Explorer today. That's exciting. Um, so yes, today we're going to have a look at the life of the Buddha. So the Buddha may have been a real person. Of course, most people seem to think that the Buddha was a real person, but the details of his life are very mythical. So we're going to have a look at exactly, well, what's going on and what Buddhists believe, or at least some Buddhists, I guess. So our story starts in Nepal, which is just north of India. There we go. Now, Nepal is nice and high up there in the Himalayas, or at least the foothills of the Himalayas. And the Buddha was born in a place called Lumbini. Ooh. Now, I've put this little picture in here because this is where Lumbini is today. This is supposed to be the birthplace of the Buddha. So this is a modern building. Our story starts about 2,500 years ago, though. So, you know, exactly whether he was born in this exact spot, we're not quite sure. But we do know the story. Now, our story actually starts before the Buddha is born, with a king and a queen. Oh. Now, this king and this queen, they rule over a nice little kingdom. Back then, India and Nepal, they didn't really exist as separate places. There was loads of kingdoms, all sort of spread out amongst the area. And this particular, oh, good morning, Ahmed, no problem at all. Oh, and good morning, Sleepy Panda. We'll get to when he dies at the end, yes. I mean, the dates are difficult, let's put it that way. If we're talking about this historically, we're talking the whole thing happening about 2,500 years ago, but yeah. Oh, and look, Jules has been to the Himalayas. That's very cool. Oh, that's very exciting. Spoiler, says Rowan. It's okay. I think we all knew he was going to die eventually. So, um, yes, this king and the queen, they rule over a kingdom, and it's quite a rich kingdom, a wealthy kingdom. And, well, one day, the queen, she gets pregnant. Ooh, and that's when things start getting a bit strange. Because our queen, here she is asleep. This is a representation. Here she is asleep. And as she sleeps, she dreams. A recurring dream all the time that she's pregnant. She's constantly dreaming of a dancing white elephant, just dancing around, waving its trunk. Now, she probably has this dream a few times, I imagine, and doesn't think much of it. But eventually, once she keeps on having the same dream of the same dancing white elephant, she decides to go to the wise men, and women, I suppose, of the court, and to ask them, what does this dream mean? Now, all of the wise seers and the people that read the heavens and the signs and the portents, they have a little think about what this could mean, and they could decide that it must mean one of two things. Either the baby that is going to be born is going to be a mighty king, a great king, or he is going to be a religious leader. Now, of course, the king and the queen, they're pretty sure that it's going to mean the first thing. It's going to be a good king, because after all, the baby is a prince, and it's going to be a king. So the chances are definitely higher of that one. But, we'll see how that ends up. Eventually, after about 40 weeks or whatever, the queen, she suddenly goes into labor. She's going to have her baby. Now, she doesn't do this, she's kind of caught off guard with how quick it is. She's not inside the palace, she's in fact outside in the gardens. And so she ends up sitting underneath a great big wide Bodhi tree. And she has the baby there. Now, it's a bit strange because the baby doesn't come out like a normal baby. Normal babies, they come out and they start to cry, don't they? They cry and they sort of wail and stuff. Oh, so, hello, Lucas and Joshua. I'm just saying that there's a queen in India. That's where we've got to so far. and she has a baby. And the baby is going to be called Siddhartha Gautama. But this baby is not normal, okay? Oh, Orion says maybe it's a mute baby. Maybe it cannot cry and make sound. That's a good point. But no, because he definitely does make a sound. It's not a very normal sound, though. Now, as he comes out, instead of crying like a normal baby, he's giggling. He's laughing. He's smiling. Ooh, that's a bit weird. Babies don't normally do that. And then the baby turns to his mother and says, I will take you to the end of the road of existence. And then it just sort of stops talking and goes back to smiling again. Weird, thinks his mum. But cool baby. I mean, yeah, he can speak, Sleepy Panda, but he seems to only speak the once, as far as we can tell. And then he goes into sort of normal baby mode. But of course, everyone who was there, and there would have been a few people there, because the queen would have been with her servants and helpers and things, they all know that this baby is different and quite impressive. Now, because he seems so different, because he laughs and giggles instead of crying, his parents think, maybe he will end up to be a great religious leader. Thank you. Maya's telling me that Buddha means awakened one. It does. Yeah, the real name of the Buddha, as we'll call him later, is Siddhartha Gautama. But yes, the Buddha is a name that was given to him, which means the enlightened one or the awakened one. Very good. Nadia, it's the story of the Buddha this morning. So our baby grows up in the palace, and his father in particular wants to make sure that he doesn't get all religious. He doesn't want him to be a religious leader. He wants him to be a great king, because he wants his kingdom to last, another brilliant generation with good leadership or whatever. But to get there, the father decides that what he needs to do is to treat his son absolutely perfectly at all times. Now, he and his wife, they love their son, and they really don't want him to be hurt. So they give him a life of absolute luxury. He's allowed to do what he wants whenever he wants. He eats all the food that he wants. He drinks all the drinks that he wants. He has entertainment when he wants it. And they go a little bit beyond that as well. They make sure that he never learns or understands about bad things at all. So, for example, if he's got servants around him and one of them gets ill, then they will be sent away, the servant, until they are better. They won't be allowed to go near Siddhartha because they don't want Siddhartha to feel bad that someone is sick. Yeah. So he never ever sees anyone being ill. He doesn't realize that people even get ill. It's not something that sort of pops into his head. As his servants start to get older, they start to age and they become wrinkly, or they start slowing down a bit in their duties, then they will be sent away before they get to that point. So the Buddha is only ever surrounded by young people, fit and healthy young people. So he doesn't realize that people get older. Yeah, and this is supposed to stop him worrying about things. It's made so that everything he wants he gets. Every day is relaxing and wonderful. But there is a slight problem for the Buddha. Well, for Siddhartha. And that is that to make sure that he stays safe and happy at all times, he's never allowed out of his palace. So he lives in the palace every day. He never leaves. He can go outside into the gardens. You've got to imagine there's like a nice palace and around it there's walled gardens. But he's never allowed past those walls. He's got to stay in the palace completely on his own. Yeah, well, not completely on his own, but with his servants and parents and stuff. But yeah, he can't go out and meet people or mix with people around. So he grows up thinking that this is just what life is like. Now, Nudge is saying that would drive her mad, and I suppose it would make you quite mad, but not if you didn't know any different, I suppose. Siddhartha, good question, Maya. Siddhartha, he stays in the palace like this for years and years until he's a young man. Here are some pictures of him in his princely days. Yes, he grows older and older, never seeing any illness, never seeing any bad times, never being sad, never not getting what he wants. He trains, as we can see here, to be an archer. And here we see all like the fancy people of the court stood around him, watching him shoot his targets. And eventually, when he's old enough, so when he's probably, I don't know, 15, 16, something like that, um, his parents organize a marriage between him and Princess Yashodhara. Yasodhara. There you go. Now, Princess Yasodhara, she's a beautiful princess from another kingdom, and she's quite happy to come and live in the palace with Siddhartha. And as you can see here in the background, there's loads of dancing and celebrations as they get married, and it's just another wonderful day in the wonderful life of Buddha. Oh, he's always just having a good time. Now, it turns out, according to our story, that if you have nothing but a good time, eventually it starts to get a little bit tedious, let's say. I mean, there's only so much archery you can do, and there's only so much dancing you can do, or eating food, or being fanned by servants, before it all gets a bit dull. And as Siddhartha grows up, he starts to question. He starts to ask, well, what is it like outside the palace? Why have I never been there? Am I missing something? Is there a whole world out there that I just don't know about? And this question, it plays on his mind. Now, Siddhartha eventually, one day, he decides that he must go out and have a look. He must go and see his kingdom because, well, he's going to be the leader of the kingdom. He's going to be the king since he's the prince now. His wife is one day going to be the queen. And to be honest, he doesn't know much about the kingdom in general. He knows a lot about the palace and he knows about the gardens, but he doesn't really understand what's going on in the wider world. And of course, if he's responsible for that, he'd better get out there and check. So he starts asking around. He starts asking the servants, can you take me outside? And they all say, no, that's against the rules. No. He asks the guards, do you mind if you just let me out and I'll go and have a look around? And the guards like, no, we've been told to keep you in. Now, Siddhartha does have one particularly faithful servant, or we could say two, I suppose, because on the very same day, all those years ago, that Siddhartha was born, there was a horse born as well, a beautiful white horse called Kanthaka. So they're exactly the same age, these guys, the horse and the boy. Now, Kanthaka is probably Siddhartha's very best friend. They get on really, really well. He rides him all around the place, I mean, only within the palace, of course, and they seem to have some kind of bond. Now, excuse me, my chat keeps disappearing, but it's come back now, so I'll just catch up with any questions that's come in here. So you're trying to keep a rogue 21-year-old curious teenager in a palace. Yes, that is exactly what's going on here. Well put, Orion. And now Bellatrix asks what happens when his own parents get old. Will they not notice? I imagine that the parents, they make sure that they always look young, maybe? I don't know how they work in it, but yeah, that's a good question. Now, Bellatrix also asks, will she tell him about religion? No one's going to mention religion to him. He's just chilling out there, just having fun. He's going to find out about religion, but not quite yet. Yes. So how do I spell his name? Let me write this up here. It might make my chat go away again, though, because my chat's doing that silly thing where it disappears. Siddhartha Gautama. Siddhartha Gautama, that's his name. There you go. Can I get my chat to come back again? Or is it just going to stay hidden? No, it's gone. It's gone. Well, we'll come back to that. Hopefully it'll come back in a minute. So, next up, he goes to another friend, one of his most respectable and friendly servants. Now, this guy's called Channa, and he has been looking after Siddhartha for a very long time. He's not the same age as Siddhartha. He's a bit older, of course. And his job is to be one of the palace's chariot drivers. So Siddhartha comes to him and says, I would really, really like to go and see around. I think it's fair. I think it's the only way that I'm going to be a good king in the future is if I understand my kingdom, right? So please, can you just take me out? Now his servant says, oh, I'm really not supposed to. I've been told by the king and queen I'm not allowed. But Siddhartha says, look, we'll even get Kanthaka, my horse. He can pull the chariot, so you don't need to take any of the king's chariots. We'll just attach it to the chariot, and we'll go around together, and we'll do it really quickly. Just one little ride around the palace and then back again. And Channa, he can't resist because he's good friends with Siddhartha, and so he decides that he is going to take him out of the palace, even though it's against the rules. Now, Sleepy Panda asks, what happens to his wife when he becomes the Buddha? We will see. We will see what happens to his wife. Yes. So he heads out of the palace. He jumps on the back of the chariot. Off they go. And we've got 4 images here of the 3 of them sort of going around. As they're going along, they're just riding around, and Siddhartha's looking at all the things. Now, we can imagine they're riding through, poor villages. And Siddhartha's never seen poor people before. He's kind of assumed that everyone sits around like him and gets fed and looked after. Fingersnail asks, is Siddhartha the creator of Buddhism? He is, yes, he is indeed. So he's a bit shocked that, well, everyone else isn't living in palaces for a start. It seems to just be him that lives in a palace. Everyone else lives in these little normal houses. Bit rubbish. And as he's going along, he's looking at all the sights and the buildings and the trees, and he's having a good time. But then all of a sudden, he shouts, "Stop! Stop the chariot! There's something weird going on." Now, Channa isn't quite sure what's going on, and he stops the chariot, and sure enough, there by the side of the road is a person. And the person is doing something that Siddhartha has never seen before. He is going, and then bleh, throwing up everywhere. Now, Siddhartha has never seen someone being sick, and it's quite shocking. What's going on? What's coming out of his mouth? Freak, freak, screams the Buddha, or something like that. I don't know. And Channa says, whoa, it's all right, Siddhartha. Don't worry. It's just someone who's ill, that's all. Everyone gets ill. But it looks horrible, says Siddhartha. Yeah, it is, says Channa. Yeah, being ill is rubbish, but it doesn't matter. Everyone gets ill, and usually you get better again, and, well, it's fine. It's part of life. Everyone gets ill sometimes. Surely you, Siddhartha, have been ill. Siddhartha says, no. And of course, he hasn't really been anywhere to get ill, I suppose. And he's never seen his servants being ill. So he's just a bit confused by the whole thing. Now, along goes the chariot again. They get back on their go. Channa's like, we really can't be out this long. We've got to hurry up. Let's do our quick little drive around and let's get back to the palace before I'm sacked. And so they keep on driving. But after just a couple of minutes, Siddhartha is shouting for the chariot to stop again because Siddhartha has seen something crazy. Siddhartha, well, how could you even explain it? Siddhartha, he sat there in his chariot, and along the road, there comes what only can be described as a wrinkly, walnut-skinned monkey creature, all sort of bent over, shuffling along, like their face is just like a bed of wrinkles. He says, whoa, there's some kind of wizened monkey creature walking along the street. Channa says, what? Don't be so rude, Siddhartha. It's a terrible thing to say. That's just an old person. What? Says Siddhartha. What's an old person? That doesn't make any sense. That's some kind of monkey mutant. No, says Channa. That's just an old person. Once that person looked just like you and me. But that's what happens when you get old. You get bent-backed and you get quite wrinkly, and I suppose you get a little bit of the monkey look about you. Says Siddhartha. I don't like the sound of that. Old person, you there, old person, how do you feel? The old person's like, I don't know, feel fine, I guess. But Siddhartha's like, well, it looks uncomfortable. It doesn't look like you can walk very well. It looks like you're all bent over. It looks like it hurts. The old person says, well, sure it hurts, but everybody gets old. It doesn't matter. Something for Siddhartha to think about. He says to Channa, Channa, am I going to get old? Channa says, yeah, if you're lucky, you'll get old. You'll get really old, just like that guy over there. Thinks Siddhartha. I don't like the sound of that. Don't like the sound of that at all. This world outside the palace seems a bit rubbish. Everyone's getting sick and getting old. Well, I suppose it can't get any worse than this. And off the chariot goes again. Now, as the chariot is riding along, it suddenly has to stop. But this time Siddhartha has not stopped it himself. No, coming down the road the other way is a funeral procession. There are lots of people walking and sort of talking in quiet voices. Somebody's playing music. And then there's a group of guys who are carrying what seems to be, to Siddhartha at least, a very sleepy human. Siddhartha says, what's going on here, Channa? Why are these people parading around with a sleeping human? Channa says, shush, Siddhartha, be respectful. Ooh. He says, they're not parading around with a sleeping person. But Siddhartha's not listening. He's already stood up in the chariot. Oi, you there. Oh, you being carried around. Sit up, come on, sit up. Everyone starts looking at Siddhartha as if he's obviously a madman, because the guy who's lying down and being carried about, he can't sit up, because you and I know that he's dead. But Siddhartha doesn't realize that he's dead. He's never been told about death before. He assumes that everyone just sticks around forever. He says, come on, wake up, you're being lazy. Look at these people, they're going through all this effort to carry you around and you're not even paying attention. Come on, wake up, wake up. Poor kid, says Rowan. But of course, Channa has to whisper into his ear, no, Siddhartha, he's not being lazy. He's dead. He's dead. Look, how do I even explain this? Sometimes, or everyone, Siddhartha, everyone's life ends. You can't just live forever. This guy has died, which means that he's gone. This life is over. Do you not see, Siddhartha? You start off young, and then you get old, and then you die. This is this. Naja asks, how old is Siddhartha? At this point, he's about, we've got to say maybe his early 20s, something like that. Maybe a late teenager. So he's not massively old, but, he's probably old enough to have learnt about sickness, old age and death by this point. But of course, he hasn't had the chance. His parents have kept him stuck in the palace. He cannot figure out what's going on. Yeah, because everything's been kept a surprise. Now, once the news of death sinks in, Siddhartha is, completely lost. Yeah, Grace says she's 11 and she knows about it. Good point. Thankfully, Grace, you haven't been locked in a palace by your parents and just fed grapes your whole life. Yeah, his palace prison. That's it. Yeah. So you can imagine Siddhartha. He's learnt about these three quite negative things all in one go, and he cannot believe it. He cannot understand. He thinks, life is just terrible. Everything is so awful all the time. What am I going to do? How am I going to... What's the point of anything? Oh, this is just terrible. I wish I'd never come out, to be honest. I was perfectly happy back there in the cat. And now I know all this bad stuff that's happening. Can I help it, Channa? Can I fix any of this stuff? Channa says, you could be a good king and you could try and make life as easy for the people as possible, I guess. But that's about it. You can't really do anything else. Siddhartha says, okay, let's just go back to the palace. I'm in a bad mood now. Possibly the first bad mood he's ever been in, by the way. I'm not feeling good. And so they head back to the palace. Now, as they're nearly arrived, as they have nearly arrived back at the palace, the chariot stops again, because there on the side of the road is a holy man, some kind of Hindu monk, probably. And Siddhartha, he's feeling pretty bad. And as the chariot is coming up to this guy, he notices that the guy is, well, smiling. He seems to be happy. Siddhartha says, "Whoa, stop the chariot one more time, Channa. Stop the chariot. I want to go and talk to this guy." So the chariot stops, and Siddhartha, he goes up to the holy man who's, in this picture here, sitting under a tree cross-legged. And he says, "Excuse me, but I've just learned that life is awful. It's just terrible. But you seem kind of happy. How can you stand to be happy in a horrible world like this? There are monkey people, old people. There are sick people. There are dead people. You seen dead people? They're like really lazy." And the wise man, he smiles and he says, "Ah, yes, the world is a place of suffering. It is. But it's okay. You can learn to live with it. As long as you learn to accept suffering, then you'll be fine. Everything suffers. Just embrace the suffering, embrace the pain, and you will be okay." Thinks Siddhartha. That sounds interesting. Okay, I just need to accept pain and suffering. I need to embrace pain and suffering. Seems like an interesting idea. He says goodbye to the holy man. He gets back in the chariot, and him and Channa and Kathanka, they ride back to the palace, where, well, to be honest, at first, he tries to just get on with his life. It's a very happy time because his wife, she falls pregnant. She's going to have a baby. There's plenty of dancing. There's plenty of fruit, loads of nice drinks, music, you name it. It's a happy, happy life in the palace once again. But it's never quite the same for Siddhartha, because no matter how much fun he's having or how pleasant his life is, he always remembers back to the people living outside the palace and how their life is full of suffering. And the words of the wise man, they reverberate around his head. "Embrace the pain. Woo, embrace the pain." That's like a flashback voice, if you were wondering. That wasn't what the holy man sounded like. He wasn't a ghost, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. So, nothing's quite right. He wants to go and try and put the holy man's holy messages into practice. Grace says that even her sisters, who are 7 and 6, know about these things. It's true. Everyone knows about it pretty much, except for Siddhartha. Poor Siddhartha. Um, uh, uh, yes, Siddhartha, are you saying? I'm not sure what you mean there. Oh, I see. So Finger Snail's pointing out that Siddhartha looks like a girl in these pictures. And we sort of saw this with the Ramayana, the story of Ram and Sita, when we did that one, didn't we? That often in Indian art, our heroes are quite androgynous, which means they look both male and female. That's a very normal part of things. So yes, the Buddha is rather beautiful in most of our pictures that I've got today. Galaxy Kit says even their sister, who is 2, knows about it. Well, there you go. Cosmos Cat says even their dog knows about it. I think everyone knows it except for Siddhartha. But it's not Siddhartha's fault, of course. He has been brought up in this way of pure luxury and not understanding the truth. But he does know now. And that means that he cannot stand living in the palace. He's got a beautiful wife. His son is born, got a beautiful son, but he's not happy. He can't be happy anymore because of the things that he has seen. Now, it isn't long after then that Siddhartha decides he must leave. He can't stay in the palace anymore. He needs to go and follow the wise man's advice. He needs to go on out into the world and embrace or accept the pain. Yeah. Now, so here we've got 2 pictures of Siddhartha as he heads off on his journey with his helper Channa here and with his beautiful horse. And he knows that he has to go and do this on his own, ultimately. That's a woman? No, that's not a woman. This is Siddhartha. Um, so he he knows he has to leave. He knows that if he wants to embrace the pain, he's going to have to leave behind his beautiful life. That includes his beautiful son and his beautiful wife. And so early one morning, just as the moon is going and the sun is rising, before the rest of the palace wakes up, he jumps on his horse, and he and Channa, they head out away from the palace, breaking all the rules, of course. Now, they ride together for a bit, maybe a few days, maybe a week. I don't really know how long they're together, the three of them. But eventually, the Buddha realizes, or Siddhartha, sorry. Yes, Nadia, you're right. Uh, uh, Eventually, he decides, look, I can't be with these two guys. I love my horse, just like I loved my wife and my son, but I've got to leave them now. I've got to do this on my own. I've got to work out how to live in such a dark and horrible world. And I don't think they're going to help me. So he says goodbye to Channa. He says goodbye to his horse, and he sets off on foot after cutting off most of his long hair, or at least shortening it considerably. Now, this horse, remember, was born on the same day as Siddhartha, Siddhartha's best friend. And as the horse watches Siddhartha walk away, away from his old life, away from his horse, the horse just sits down and dies right there, out of a broken heart. Oh, poor horse. And Siddhartha doesn't look back. He just keeps on walking out in the world to no, says Isla. Yeah, he keeps walking out into the world to find a way to deal with the truth of suffering. Now, before anyone gets too upset about the horse, it's not all bad. The horse will be reincarnated into a heavenly being, so don't worry. Yeah, the horse has a good afterlife. But for now, the horse has died of a broken heart. Now, we got to imagine, of course, at this point, it's not just the horse that's upset. Channa has just lost his friend. His wife has just lost her husband. His parents have just lost, well, their son and the next king. His own son has lost his father. I mean, he's left everything behind. And he's left it all behind intentionally to try and understand suffering, to understand pain. And so Siddhartha does what the holy man had suggested when he was on his chariot ride. He starts to live a life of pain. Now, I don't know how you guys would do this, and hopefully you wouldn't bother, but Siddhartha thinks, well, okay, I've got to make sure that I'm miserable all the time. I've got to embrace the pain. So he takes off all his clothes so he can never be comfortable. He's going south now, so we're getting into like a warmer and warmer climate as the further he goes south. We can imagine the sun burning him in the day, him being cold every night because he's got no clothes on. Every biting bug or snake or insect is going to be hurting him. I mean, it's not good. Freya asks, is he wearing pants? No pants even. I mean, and Maya says, seriously, isn't seeing a horse die enough pain and suffering? Apparently not. He's gonna go deep into the pain and suffering. He doesn't eat enough. He makes sure that he eats barely any food a day and drinks only enough water to barely stay alive. And he starts getting thinner and thinner. Every time he starts to feel even a little bit comfortable or a little bit happy, he'll do something to make himself uncomfortable again. Maybe he'll go and roll around in some stinging nettles. Or maybe he'll drop a rock on his foot. Or maybe he'll, walk into a swarm of bees. Yeah, just to make sure that he's thoroughly miserable. Now, the priest that he met, the holy man, seemed to suggest that embracing pain would help him understand pain, which would help him get over pain, become one with the pain and the suffering, man. And to be fair, Siddhartha gives this a good go, a real good go. He goes around completely naked, starving hungry, cold or too hot, covered in bruises and scratches. The monk is to blame, says Maya. I don't know if the monk was expecting him to take this so literally, but he lives in this way of pain and suffering for 7 long years. 7 years of being absolutely miserable. Now, I don't know about you guys, but 7 years of being absolutely miserable, it's no fun at all. And to be honest, by the time he gets to that 7th year, Siddhartha's, well, I mean, obviously he's not feeling too good. He's about to die, to be honest. And he hasn't learnt anything. All he's learnt is that suffering's really bad, but to be honest, he got that from the chariot ride. He saw that suffering was bad. Yeah. He hasn't found a way to deal with it. He hasn't found a way to live with it. To be honest, being hungry is just as bad 7 years later as it was on the first day he started being hungry. Hitting yourself with some stinging nettles is just as painful now as it was back then. I mean, he's not seeming to deal with anything, and he's giving up hope, to be honest. And at the end of those 7 years, well, this is kind of what he looks like here. He's not doing well. Not doing well at all. Poor Siddhartha. He decides, well, he knows that it's time to die. He's just too hungry. I mean, he's too thin. He's too worn out. He's a mess. He probably misses his family and his child and all that kind of stuff. So he sits down under a Bodhi tree. Just sits there, closes his eyes, puts his hands together, and he says to himself, either I am going to figure out how to deal with suffering, or I'm going to die. Well, either way, I don't mind. He says, I'm not going to open my eyes again, and I'm not going to stand up again. This is it. I'm done. Either I figure out the answer, or I just die right here and right now. And to be honest, he knows that it's not going to take long for him to die because, well, he's a skeleton. Yeah, it's not good. Maya asks, why doesn't he live with the poor people and experience the pain in that way? Yes, that would have been far more sensible, wouldn't it? No, he decided to go all in on the pain. I'm going to really, really hurt myself for 7 years. And then I will know the truth. But of course, he doesn't know the truth. All he knows is that it's time to disappear. So he sits there and he closes his eyes and he starts to think. Now, we would call it meditation. He would call it meditation. He starts to meditate, to think, and first of all, to try and answer the questions of existence. But then he realizes that he's trying to let his mind go and wander. And he sits there for a whole day, completely still, eyes closed, legs crossed, just waiting for inspiration or death. Now, there are other people in this picture that I've got here, but I usually the story goes that he's doing this and he's doing it alone. No one really knows what he's doing. He's just some guy who's incredibly thin, sat under a tree. Yeah? But there is certainly one person or one thing that knows that he's doing it. Grace, I'm not going to repeat what you just said there. He sat under his tree, and Mara, the evil, terrible demon, Mara, he sees him, and he thinks, uh-oh, this guy is sat under a tree, trying to wait for enlightenment. What if he finds enlightenment? What if he finds the answer for dealing with suffering? Well, that would make my job as a demon particularly bad. Now, we can see Mara in this picture. Now I see what you mean, Sleepy Panda. Mara is the woman here. Here she is with her incredibly long hair. But she also has with her armies of demons, terrible creatures, a demon elephant. Ooh. Now, Buddha can't see any of this, of course, and most of us couldn't, because these are supernatural beings. But as Buddha is there, eyes closed, through the first day, at the end of the first day, inside his mind's eye, because of course he won't open his eyes, but somehow he can see. It's all a bit weird, He probably assumes that he's hallucinating or something because he's about to die, but up to him comes this beautiful woman with a huge plate of food. Ooh, lovely. And she says, Siddhartha, Siddhartha, you look so pale. Siddhartha, you look so hungry. How about you eat some lovely food? Bit creepy. Siddhartha, he does want the food. He really wants the food. He hasn't eaten that much food in literally a year, combined. And it looks really good. And he's about to die, so what could it hurt to just eat a bit of food before he dies, yeah? But he thinks, no, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to open my eyes. Come on, Siddhartha. All you need to do is open your eyes and you can have all this wonderful food. Just stand up for me. Come over here and eat the lovely snacks that I have on this beautiful plate. Siddhartha just sits there. No, he thinks, I'm not going to move. I'm not going to open my eyes. I promised myself. It's either death or enlightenment. No, I'm not moving. And so Mara, she sort of stamps her foot and she goes away with the food. And Siddhartha, he sits there for another day. Closer to death this time, of course. Even thinner than he was the day before, and he was pretty thin then. But he's sitting there in meditation, and, well, he's starting to feel like perhaps things are starting to make sense, Maybe if he just thinks a little bit longer, he might understand the world. He might understand how to deal with suffering. He's nearly there. But then along comes Mara again. And she says, Siddhartha, come with me. Come on, I will give you a great big kiss. If you just stand up and open your eyes and go over there with me, to that other tree. All she wants to do is get him to move. And she flutters her eyelids at him. And she says, come on, surely you'd like to give me a kiss? And he's thinking, you are quite nice. I would quite like to give you a kiss, but I'm not opening my eyes. I'm not opening my eyes. I'm not going to stand up. I promised myself. I'm either going to die or I'm going to find enlightenment. I'm not moving. Not moving. Now, Mara, she tries to get him to move as much as she can, but she cannot. So she gives up and she stamps her foot and she stomps away again. Siddhartha then, he's managed to get through 2 quite tempting temptations, like most temptations are, I guess. But now he's very, very close. He's very close to both death and enlightenment, to be honest. And as the 3rd day draws out, he starts to piece things together. His mind is expanding. He's starting to understand. He's starting to work out his plan for living with suffering in a world that is so terrible. He's starting to learn the truth. But Mara comes back. she is like a baby that is tantruming, Bilal. That's right. She's very cross, is Mara. Oh, stamping her little foot. Oh. But this time, she decides to take a different tack. She decides that if she can't persuade him, tempt him to move, then she's just going to have to force him to move. And she gathers round her a vast army of demons. And they circle around the tree. And Siddhartha, he's there with his eyes closed. Not going to move, not going to move, not going to open my eyes, but he can sense them all around him, the demons, including, in this picture, the demon elephant. Oh, that's a good question, Maya, but we'll see. So he sat there. He's waiting. And he feels the evil army of demons. And at one moment, Mara calls the attack. Attack him! Knock him away from the tree! He's too close! And so the demons, they start to charge, but they cannot get to Siddhartha. There seems to be some kind of barrier around him, some kind of pure energy, which they cannot get past. And Mara, she picks up her bow and arrow, and she tells the demons to do the same. And on one order, they all fire at Siddhartha. 100 arrows coming from all different directions. They speed towards him. They go through the strange force field of energy. And just before they touch his body, poof, each one of them turns into a beautiful flower and drifts down to the ground. And so instead of being killed by demons, Siddhartha is now sat in a circle of beautiful flowers with poor old Mara, I say poor old Mara, evil Mara, stamping her foot and snarling and pulling her hair in frustration. But she can't get to him. He's too deep in meditation. He is now protected by his own enlightenment. And she turns away and she takes her demon army and away they go. So, Siddhartha, he's pretty much oblivious to everything now because he's there. It's the time to either die or be enlightened. And of course, as we can see by how healthy he is in this picture, suddenly he understands. He understands everything. The lights come on and he understands the world around him. He understands the facts of nature and the universe and the cosmos. He understands himself. He understands other people. He understands that life is suffering, but that it's okay. He understands that there is a way through suffering. Yes, he comes up with philosophy, essentially, Rowan. Yes. Fingersnail, interesting question here, asks, how did the elephant shoot? I'm imagining he just shot an arrow out of his trunk, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. And Josh points out that there's a demon face in the clouds. There is indeed. It's all a very scary thing. But of course, you can see how tightly Siddhartha's eyes are closed in our picture here. He's not being bothered by it. It's like, yeah, let the demons come. So he reaches enlightenment. He understands all things. He is now ready to live happily in life by doing a little bit of both. He comes up with what we would call, or what he would call, the middle way. He's tried the two extremes. He's tried, for the first part of his life, he lived in absolute luxury. He was never sad. He was always happy. But was it a good life? No, it was an empty life. And in the end, it wasn't good enough for it. Then he tried the other way. He tried just being in pain for 7 long years, so much pain that he nearly died. Did that help him? No. So he realizes that there must be a middle path, somewhere between the luxury and the suffering. And that is the way to go in life. Take the middle path. Let's not be too extreme one way or the other. We take the middle. Now, under that tree, as he reaches enlightenment, he is completely made whole again. Here he is. And one of the most striking symbols of Buddhism, which is the religion that he is now going to go and create, because Siddhartha, at this moment, becomes known as the Buddha, the awakened one, the enlightened one. And one of the big symbols of Buddhism and being enlightened is the water lily. Yeah, the lotus. That's right, Maya. Yeah, both. So Buddhists speak about, and the Buddha taught about, the lotus, because the lotus is like him. Yeah, this water lily. Water lilies, they start off life down in the bottom of a pond or a lake or something. And they are down there, the bulb of the lily is under the mud. Yeah, it's all dark and there's, nothing really going on. It's all a bit grim if you're a little baby water lily. But of course, as you grow and you grow, eventually the water lily will poke its head up out of the water and it will open up into a beautiful flower. And this is what the Buddha has done. He's lived all his life down in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but now he's come up and he has seen the light. He has opened up like the flower of a water lily, and now he understands everything around him. And he can take that knowledge and he has one real goal: to go and share it with other people, to help them to become enlightened too. There you go. Oh, your MB Shadow Girl's mum wants a water lily. I got a water lily for Father's Day this year. It was very, very good. Yes. Um, yes, I like my water lilies. Um, and Jules says, and now he dies. Not quite. It is not the time for his death yet. Because the Buddha, he now starts moving around, first of all his kingdom and then other kingdoms, teaching, talking, telling people how they should live. Now, essentially what he says is that suffering is the root of all problems. And he tells them that there are four noble truths. He says that suffering is real, that everyone suffers. He says that it's okay, there is a way out of suffering. And he says, well, the way out of suffering is to follow me in my eightfold path, to live right, to speak right, to act right, to meditate right, and others until they come to 8. And he says, if you can do this, then you too will find enlightenment. You too can become a Buddha. Yeah, because like someone said right at the beginning of this, there's a difference between the Buddha and a Buddha. Some types of Buddhism have things called Bodhisattvas, who are enlightened ones who reach enlightenment on earth, and they stick around like the Buddha did to help other people decide what to do. He says, life is bad, life is suffering, but at the same time, because I am now enlightened, I can tell you guys that, well, the reality as you know it is not real anyway. Everything we do is just some kind of mirage, some kind of illusion. Yeah, we shouldn't hang around just worrying about all the illusionary stuff. He says, look, we don't even exist ourselves. There is no such thing as you. You have no soul. There is no God. Instead, we are just energy. We are karma moving around the universe from body to state. We're just moving around, just karma. So don't worry, guys. Try and be sensible. Try and be calm. Try never to get too excited, to be too over the top, and try never to be too sad. Try and stay on the middle path. And, well, his message became more and more popular until he was, well, 79 years old. Um, Maya asks, how come all his followers are almost bald and he isn't? I suppose in this picture it's to show us that he's usually shown with hair like this. I suppose it's because it differentiates him from the others, because otherwise he looks the same, I suppose, if they all just go bald, doesn't it? But most Buddhists today, if you are a monk or a nun, you will shave your hair off, whether you're a boy or a girl. They have the same hairstyle applies, depending on where you are in the world. Now, the Buddha, he becomes super famous all over India, and then eventually his name will spread across Asia. So the big jump will be from India to China, over the Himalayas, and then it will spread to Japan and down into places like Thailand and Vietnam and Cambodia. But the strange thing is, today, Buddhism is the main religion in quite a few countries, Asian countries, but not in India. Because although he is Indian, there aren't actually that many Buddhists left in India. I mean, there are a few, but there's certainly not the percentage of other religions. And so most of the time when we see Buddhists, we see them in places like China or Japan, where the Buddha can look quite different. You might have seen a big, fat, happy, laughing Buddha statue. That's the Chinese version, but he doesn't look like Siddhartha does in the Indian stories. Yeah. Now, Nadja asked a question. Why do you think this story is actually true? And I don't know. I mean, as far as we can tell, there was someone called the Buddha, and he created Buddhism. But whether he lived in a palace ever, or whether he was ever attacked by demons, we can't really say, can we? The legend of the Buddha was written a long time after his life. That's the thing. Like a lot of these myths that we've been talking about. Now, who's asking this question? Bilal asks, why does he have long ears? And I think it's just a fashion thing, you know. He has long ears in most of our pictures. You can see even in the statue behind me here. He has long ears. I don't know if there's a particular meaning to the long ears. I'm not sure. Galaxy Kit says this cannot be real. I don't know. But anyway, He teaches until he's 79 years old, walking around, trying to get people to be peaceful and relax and take that middle way, until his 80th birthday. Now, on his 80th birthday, can I fit that all on? There we go. He sits down under a Bodhi tree. Yeah, not the same tree that he was born under or gained enlightenment under, but another tree. Trees are important here. And he says to his followers, I'm going to die now. And his followers, they are sad, and they say, no, you can't die, don't leave us, what are we going to do? And he says, don't worry, all must depart. All beings that have life must shed their compound forms. Yes, even a master such as he, a peerless being, powerful in wisdom and enlightenment, even he must pass away. When I am gone, my teaching shall be your master and guide. Apamadina, Sapamadhatha, Veya, Dharma, Sankara. Work diligently, material things are impermanent. Which, you know, to be honest, it's not like the best ever like death words in history, but it's still pretty cool. And with that, on his 80th birthday, he closes his eyes and he dies. And his soul, which doesn't exist, no, not his soul, his karma disappears into the ether, off to nirvana, which is kind of like heaven for Buddhists. And that's him gone. But of course, his teachings stick around, and Buddhists to this day try and follow the teachings of the Buddha. But interestingly, one of those teachings is that when you're looking for your own path of enlightenment, if you should meet me, the Buddha, on the road, you should probably kill me. You know, do things your own way. Try and be like me, but don't try and just do what I say. Think for yourselves, guys. Yeah. It'll be all right. Oh, I've got one last question. What happened to his wife and son? I don't know. In some versions, he goes back and he meets them and they become Buddhists. In other versions, he just never sees them again. So I don't know. I mean, go with the one that you prefer. As a Buddhist, he can't go and stay part of the family. He's got to separate himself, because through separation becomes power. There you go. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. That is the story of the Buddha. Hopefully I will see you all next week. Yeah. Have a good week. Goodbye.